In this world, we often see a surprising and puzzling phenomenon. Individuals who seem to lack the skills or competence, or perhaps even deep knowledge in their field, can rise to the top of power. This doesn't just happen in politics, but also in various sectors, including corporate worlds, organizations, and even in social spaces. Think of some examples from both history and the modern world, such as the reign of Emperor Nero, who remained in power despite his obvious incompetence when Rome was burning. Or, look at how figures like Elizabeth Holmes, who had no strong technological background, managed to raise millions of dollars for a company, only to have it revealed later that the technology they developed never worked. This phenomenon is not a rare occurrence. In fact, we often see that people who are less competent dominate the world of power, while those who are more talented, experienced, or have better abilities are sidelined or even fail to attain such positions. This can become a fascinating paradox to study. How can people who lack skills or abilities rise to such influential positions, while those who are more competent are left without the same opportunities? It's important to understand that this phenomenon is not just an accident or mere coincidence. There are deep psychological and structural reasons behind it. When we look deeper, we see that many factors are at play behind the scenes, causing less competent people to take important positions. One of these factors is the psychological principles and human perceptions that greatly influence who we deem worthy of leadership. In many cases, appearance is prioritized over actual competence. This is related to how, as humans, we often trust what we see and feel directly, rather than delving into more complex details. Confidence in appearance, decisiveness, and the ability to speak persuasively are often more valued in politics and business than deep knowledge and technical skills. This explains why some leaders who are less competent can maintain their positions simply by leveraging their strong appearance and self-confidence. Of course, this is not just an issue in politics or large businesses. In everyday life, we can observe how individuals who tend to speak louder or more frequently get more attention than those who are calmer and have deeper insights. This ultimately leads to power not always being in the hands of the most competent, but rather in the hands of those who are best at manipulating public perception. This phenomenon is not just about appearance or individual psychology. It also encompasses the power structures present in society. There are systems and mechanisms that allow certain people to maintain their power even if they do not have the capacity to carry out their responsibilities well. In many cases, power is often sustained by those who have strong personal relationships or the ability to create certain impressions, rather than those who have the best technical or intellectual capabilities. What is seen on the surface is often only a small part of the bigger picture, and often what we see does not reflect the reality of what is truly happening. This is a paradox that often arises in our social and political systems. How can someone who seemingly doesn't meet the qualifications end up in power? And why are more competent individuals often sidelined? By exploring this further, we will delve deeper into the dynamics of power, how human psychology influences our decisions in choosing leaders, and why Machiavelli's strategies remain relevant in understanding this phenomenon. This understanding not only gives us insights into politics or the world of business, but also allows us to analyze broader social dynamics. In the following chapters, we will delve deeper into Machiavelli's philosophy and how the principles he taught can help us understand why less competent people often end up at the top of power. Niccolò Machiavelli, an Italian philosopher and diplomat, has long been known as one of the most controversial figures in the history of political thought. His seminal work, The Prince il Principe, first published in 1532, not only shocked the political world of his time, but continues to be a subject of debate to this day. Machiavelli is known not for advocating idealistic principles about how government should be conducted, but for his pragmatic approach that emphasizes how power actually functions in the real world. What sets The Prince apart from earlier political works is Machiavelli's emphasis on the often bitter and shocking reality of how power is acquired and maintained. Previously, many political thinkers and philosophers presented views on how leaders should behave in an ideal world, a world where goodness and justice prevail. In contrast, Machiavelli was not interested in utopias or a perfect world. He was more interested in a world filled with intrigue, competition, and uncertainty. He wanted to describe the practical and sometimes harsh ways rulers use to maintain their positions in a real world full of conflict and tension. For many, The term Machiavellian politics has come to be synonymous with manipulation, deceit, and sly power tactics. However, what is often overlooked is that Machiavelli was not only talking about power in a narrow sense, but also about the fundamental nature of humanity and how humans, both as individuals and as part of society, behave in situations of high pressure. He delves deeply into human psychology, how people are often more interested in appearances than in reality, how fear and the desire to acquire something better can influence our decisions, and how this affects the way we choose our leaders. Machiavelli poses a fundamental question. What makes a leader successful in a world filled with chaos and uncertainty? To answer this, he studies history and concrete examples of great and flawed figures throughout history, whether they be kings, military leaders, or politicians. He finds that in many cases, the success of a leader depends not on how well they understand morality or ideal public policies, but on their ability to navigate and exploit the existing socio-political conditions. One of the key points highlighted by Machiavelli is that the most effective leaders are those who can adapt to change and seize the opportunities that arise. In The Prince, Machiavelli writes that a leader must have the courage to take necessary actions, even if those actions are unpopular or contradict prevailing moral norms. In his view, the primary goal of a ruler is to maintain power and preserve the stability of the state, and to achieve this goal, they may need to use tactics that are not always considered good by conventional moral standards. For example, Machiavelli argues that a ruler who is weak in terms of power will often fall, because they cannot respond decisively to challenges. Therefore, although certain actions, such as using violence or deceit, may seem immoral, in some cases, these actions could be considered necessary for survival in a political world full of threats and competition. What is even more surprising is Machiavelli's view on morality. For many, morality and ethics are the foundation of all political decisions. However, for Machiavelli, morality often becomes irrelevant in the context of maintaining power. In many instances, Machiavelli emphasizes that a ruler must be willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their goals. This sometimes leads us to the controversial idea that the ends justify the means, an idea that continues to be debated in political discourse to this day. However, it is important to note that Machiavelli is not a thinker who advocates evil or wrongdoing for the sake of power. He is more of a pragmatist who acknowledges the harsh realities of the political world. He argues that although morality is important in private life, in the complex world of politics, a leader who wants to survive must be able to sacrifice some moral values for a greater goal. Machiavelli's approach sparked intense debates, especially among moral philosophers and idealists. Some view him as a genius who realistically understands that the political world is not as simple as the concept of morality. In contrast, others consider him a dangerous thinker because he justifies manipulation and wrongdoing for the sake of power. However, despite the controversy, Machiavelli's political philosophy remains relevant to this day. In an increasingly complex and competitive world, Machiavelli's philosophy provides us with the tools to analyze how power operates in real life. He teaches us that in facing the challenges of power, we need more than just idealism. We need to understand human psychology and how we react to uncertainty, fear, and ambition. Overall, The Prince is not just a guide to gaining power, but also a profound study of human nature and how we, as individuals and groups, make decisions in situations of moral ambiguity. By analyzing and understanding the basic principles he taught, we can begin to understand why many leaders who are less competent still manage to hold on to power, while those who are more skilled and wise often fail to reach the top. One of the key principles emphasized by Machiavelli is that, in politics, appearance is often more important than reality. This is in stark contrast to the common view that technical competence and intelligence are the primary factors in acquiring and maintaining power. However, based on Machiavelli's observations, appearance, particularly the appearance of confidence, can be far more influential than actual ability in the world of power. In many cases, the ability to appear strong, convincing, and lead with confidence is far more advantageous than having deeper or better knowledge. Machiavelli highlights that leaders who are overly intelligent, those who constantly analyze and question everything, often face risks in the political world. Those who are too intelligent might often appear doubtful, overly critical, or too reflective when facing situations, which, in turn, can reduce the public's trust in their ability to lead. In a world full of uncertainty and tension, a strong sense of confidence can overcome intelligence that seems unclear. In other words, leaders who know how to create the illusion of confidence are often more respected than those who are actually wiser and more talented but fail to project that confidence. This point is highly relevant in many real-world situations, where we often see individuals who are less skilled or less competent but manage to appear as though they are strong leaders. In politics, for example, we often see leaders who speak with great confidence, even if what they're saying is not based on reality or deep thought. People often trust leaders who speak loudly and clearly, even though they do not always provide better or more intelligent solutions compared to others with lower profiles. Intelligence, according to Machiavelli, can backfire in the quest for power. Leaders who are too intelligent often get caught up in excessive analysis and are unable to make quick decisions required to act in emergency situations. In contrast, leaders who think and act more simply, offering solutions that are easily understood by many, often have more success leading. This becomes a paradox that we often see in the world of politics and business. Those who seem the most prepared and wise often lose out in the competition for attention, support, and power. This phenomenon is known in psychology as the Dunning-Kruger effect, which refers to the tendency of individuals with limited knowledge to overestimate their abilities, while those who are more knowledgeable tend to be more humble and underestimate their abilities. In politics, this phenomenon is especially noticeable, as less competent leaders, who feel confident in their abilities, are often able to influence the masses more effectively than wiser leaders, who are more open about their limitations. People with less knowledge often speak with great certainty and confidence, making them appear more competent than those who know more but are more cautious and hesitant. Machiavelli observed that wisdom in decision-making is not always well received by the public. Leaders with broad insight and a deep understanding of the issues at hand are often seen as too complicated and inaccessible to the public. In contrast, those who can simplify problems and offer seemingly easy and practical solutions tend to gain public support more easily. This simplification, although it may not be effective in the long run, often appeals to people who seek clear and direct answers without considering complexities that may be involved. A concrete example of this phenomenon can be seen in how political leaders or business people often build their images. Those who are able to create an aura of confidence, speak with conviction, and avoid appearing confused about complex issues often manage to attract more followers and voters than those who are wiser but more cautious and appear uncertain. People tend to be more influenced by a strong and unwavering appearance, even if it's just an illusion, than by intelligence that may be harder to understand. The main problem faced by overly intelligent leaders is their tendency to always view problems from a more complex and nuanced perspective. This can make them appear less decisive or unable to provide clear answers. In a world full of uncertainty, people often look for leaders who can provide clarity and a sense of security, even if that means accepting simpler and less accurate solutions. Moreover, excessive wisdom can become an obstacle for leaders in a fast-moving world. Too much ethical consideration or deep evaluation of a decision can cause delays, while in politics or business, quick and decisive decisions are often more valued. In this regard, true intelligence and wisdom can be a hindrance to gaining and maintaining power, while confident appearances and seemingly easy solutions are more accepted by the public. What we can learn from Machiavelli's view is that power is often not just about technical ability or knowledge, but more about how we present ourselves to the world. Appearance becomes a key factor in building trust and gaining support. A leader who can show confidence, even if they are less competent, often achieves their goals more successfully than those who have more abilities but cannot project a strong and convincing image. One of the most relevant psychological principles in leadership is the Dunning-Kruger effect, which was first explained by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999. This effect describes a phenomenon where people with limited knowledge about a subject tend to overestimate their abilities, while those who are truly experts tend to be more humble and often underestimate their own abilities. In the context of leadership, this effect explains why people who are less knowledgeable or less competent often appear to be more effective leaders in the eyes of the public, simply because they feel more confident and assured in their abilities, even though the reality may be different. This phenomenon does not only apply to individuals with limited knowledge, but also applies in various social and political situations. In a world full of uncertainty and complexity, people tend to be more attracted to leaders who speak with great confidence, even though their understanding might be limited. This ties back to what Machiavelli considered one of the crucial factors in maintaining power: the strong appearance of confidence. In many cases, leaders who appear sure of what they say and do are often seen as more competent, even if they do not have a deep understanding or the necessary skills to carry out their duties effectively. Machiavelli himself recognized the importance of confidence in politics and leadership. He believed that, although wisdom is key to being a good leader, confidence is an even more crucial factor for maintaining power in a world full of challenges. Confidence creates an impression of competence and provides a stability that is greatly needed when facing uncertainty and crises. In contrast, leaders who doubt themselves or show confusion will lose support and credibility. In the world of politics, confidence can be a more powerful weapon than intelligence or true intellectual ability. The Dunning-Kruger effect explains why many leaders who appear less competent are able to lead successfully. People with limited knowledge often believe they know more than they actually do, and this gives them the courage to speak and act in ways that seem more convincing. They are able to project an image of a strong leader, even though they do not have the capability to support their claims. In many cases, this explains why we often see less skilled or incompetent leaders managing to stay in power. Their confidence, even if not backed by adequate ability, creates an illusion of competence that can convince the public to support them. In a study conducted by Dunning and Kruger, they found that people with lower levels of knowledge about a subject tended to have higher levels of confidence compared to those who were more knowledgeable. Those with more knowledge often tend to recognize their limitations, which makes them more humble and prone to underestimating their abilities. In contrast, those who know less about a subject tend to feel more confident and sure of their abilities, even though in reality, they do not fully understand the complexity of the issue at hand. It is important to understand that the Dunning-Kruger effect does not only occur with individuals who have limited knowledge. It also explains why highly intelligent or knowledgeable people often struggle to achieve leadership positions, due to their tendency to doubt themselves or feel that they are not good enough, while individuals with limited knowledge appear more convincing. In politics, this is reflected in the fact that leaders who possess deep technical knowledge on specific issues often have trouble communicating with the masses because they tend to emphasize the complexity of the issues and solutions that are not always easily understood by the general public. However, the Dunning-Kruger effect does not only benefit individuals with limited competence. Sometimes, leaders who speak with great confidence and can create the illusion of competence can gain an advantage, even if they do not have a deep understanding of the issues they are facing. This is a very powerful phenomenon in both politics and business, where influence and support often depend on how confident someone can project themselves, not just how much they know. Those who can appear confident, even without deep knowledge, often manage to manipulate public perception and exploit uncertainty to gain power. Furthermore, modern research shows that confidence has a significant impact on one's ability to lead. In a study conducted by psychologists in 2020, it was found that people who display a high level of confidence are more likely to be seen as effective leaders by others, even if their abilities or knowledge are no better than anyone else's. This shows that, psychologically, people tend to judge confidence as an indicator of competence, even though it may not always be the case. Excessive confidence, although it can sometimes be dangerous, actually has a great appeal. When a leader projects an extraordinary sense of confidence, it can provide a sense of security and stability to those around them. This confidence creates the illusion of power, which in turn makes others feel more comfortable following them. In many cases, leaders who can project a strong and unwavering image, even if they lack sufficient skills, are more likely to win the hearts and minds of people than those who are wiser but appear hesitant. In this world full of uncertainty, we often seek leaders who provide quick and definite solutions. Great confidence becomes the main factor that grabs attention and makes people feel assured in following such leaders. Therefore, although leaders with limited knowledge may appear incompetent, they often succeed in maintaining power simply by leveraging the strength of their appearance and confidence. One of the main themes found in Machiavelli's analysis of politics is the importance of manipulating perceptions to maintain power. In a world full of uncertainty and competition, Leaders who wish to survive must have the ability to manipulate how people perceive them and their decisions. Trust, not just competence, is the most crucial element in creating the impression that a leader is worthy of following. Successful leaders are often not the most competent, but the ones who can control the public's perception of them, projecting an image of strength, decisiveness, and correct decisions, even though in reality, they may not always be right or have a full understanding of the situation. Machiavelli observed that politics is not a world focused on truth or justice, but rather on how to create the illusion that a leader has control over the situation. In The Prince, he emphasizes that a ruler who is skilled at manipulating public opinion will have greater power than a ruler who tries to act according to high moral or ethical principles. Trust is a very powerful tool that can change the way people see a leader, and in this way, trust can become a very effective form of manipulation. One of the most effective manipulation techniques in politics is the use of group identity or tribalism to strengthen a leader's position. Successful leaders are often able to create a clear boundary between us in group and them out group. In this way, they divert attention from their own shortcomings or failures by identifying a common enemy that must be fought. This strategy has been used by populist leaders and dictators throughout history because it leads to increased solidarity within their supporter groups. When a group feels threatened by a larger enemy, they tend to unite and become more loyal to the leader who shows the ability to fight against that threat. This manipulation of identity often leverages fear and collective anxiety. When a leader can exploit their group's fear of an external threat, whether it be a foreign nation, a different social group, or even an internal group perceived as a threat, they can increase a sense of unity and loyalty among their followers. This often happens even if the leader themselves may not have a real solution to the existing threat. However, by directing attention to an external enemy, they can strengthen their image as the only one capable of protecting that group. Machiavelli understood this dynamic very well. In The Prince, he wrote that a leader must be prepared to use any means necessary to control public perception, even if it means exploiting fear or hatred. According to him, decisiveness and steadfastness in confronting a common enemy are very effective ways to build trust among the people. When people feel that their leader is the only one who can protect them from a greater threat, they are more likely to give stronger support. However, although this strategy can be very effective in maintaining power, there is a great danger in manipulating fear and identity. When fear is used as a political tool, it can create polarization that damages and endangers social stability. A leader who relies on manipulating fear may succeed in maintaining power in the short term, but ultimately, this can cause long-term damage to social and political structures. Moreover, leaders who rely on manipulating trust also need to be careful not to lose control over the image they have built. Trust is something fragile and can be lost in an instant if a leader fails to meet promises or if their behavior contradicts the image they have created. In many cases, leaders who focus too much on manipulating perceptions can lose their credibility once the truth is revealed or once a major failure occurs. A concrete example of this trust manipulation can be seen in cases in business and politics, where leaders who appear to be very confident and strong gain public support or large investments, even though the products or policies they offer do not always have a strong foundation. For instance, many tech companies are led by founders who manage to project themselves as visionary leaders, even though in reality, the products they offer fail to meet expectations or even fail completely. However, because they are able to create a powerful image of confidence, they still manage to secure funding and support from investors or customers. In addition to creating a strong image, successful leaders in manipulating trust also know how to keep their followers in a state of emotional dependency. They make their followers feel that their fate is directly tied to the success or failure of the leader. In this way, the leader creates loyalty that is not only based on rational interest, but also on a strong emotional bond. When a leader successfully builds this emotional relationship with their followers, they reduce the likelihood of betrayal or opposition, as the followers feel that they are not only following a leader, but also part of something bigger, a shared identity shaped by the leader. However, this manipulation strategy can also be dangerous. When a leader relies too heavily on manipulating perceptions and lacks a solid policy foundation or abilities, they may get caught in creating an image that becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. When the truth eventually comes out, or when the situation begins to reveal the leader's inability to face real challenges. The trust they have built can collapse quickly. Leaders who successfully maintain their image often focus on manipulating perceptions, but they must also have the skill to respond to reality and meet the expectations of those they lead.